February, as we know, is American Heart Month, and March, did you know, is National Kidney Month. And new research shows that the problems in one another can quietly affect each other. This morning, to talk more about how your kidneys and your heart are deeply linked, is Dr. Samir Parikh, president of the American Society of Nephrology. Dr. Parikh, thank you for your time. Great to see you, sir.
Dan, thank you for having me on. This is such an important topic. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, well, thank you. It's great having you. A lot of people think about your heart, your kidney, two separate things here. Let's just dive in big picture. How are they connected?
Well, listen, I'll share with you the way I learned about it in medical school, right? You've got the heart is your pump and the kidneys are the filter, right? The kidney's job is to filter that blood. And if the filter's not working, that's going to put a lot of strain on the heart. It's going to make that pump have to work harder. The kidneys are responsible for balancing the chemistry around the body, so that affects the electricity around the heart, so you can get abnormal electrical rhythms too. And if your kidneys are not working well, you've got one more problem, which is that the arteries around the heart start hardening. And so kidneys, when they're not working well, put a lot of stress and strain on the heart.
And if they're not working well, is that what leads to kidney disease or vice versa? I mean, I was surprised to see about 1 in 7 adults have it, and many may not even realize it, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so we're talking about a silent epidemic, right? 1 in 7 adults in the United States. And look, in your market in Atlanta, it's probably even higher. And why is that? What's happening? Why is there so much kidney disease out there? How come so many people's kidneys aren't working well? The risk factors are diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, obesity, overweight, and a family history of kidney disease, of course. But you start thinking about those risk factors, and we've got a lot of them. I'm calling in from Dallas. We've got a lot of all of that in the South, right? So that's those are the conditions that are putting stress on on those kidney filters that we're talking about. These are basically a bunch of small blood vessels, 1 million little filters in each kidney, and they are being pounded by years and decades of high sugars and all kinds of stress, and that's what's leading to all of this chronic kidney disease.
So if I know that I may have some of those stressors in my life or fall into some of those categories that you mentioned, what should I be doing at this point? And at what age should you really start being concerned?
Look, if you've got any of those risk factors we're talking about, right? Heart disease, high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, a family history, I think it's really important to just have a conversation with your primary care doctor. Hey, I heard I should get my kidneys checked out. Because the really good news is that we have simple and accurate tests. There's a blood test and there's a urine test, and they're very good at identifying kidney disease. The problem, as you noted up top, one of the other problems we have to deal with is that kidney disease can be clinically silent. As these little microscopic filters are dropping off, it's not like you're going to feel kidney pain. And so the symptoms of kidney disease don't come on until really when kidney disease is quite advanced. And we want to catch kidney disease much, much earlier.
So you start with your PCP, and then I guess you get referred to a specialist. What could that wait be like? I mean, is that something they want to expedite?
Absolutely. Yes, we've got a lot of chronic kidney disease in this country, but at the same time, we've got nephrologists who are really, more excited than ever to start working with patients. And I think, look, if you're a patient and you find out that you've got a new medical condition, that's not a great feeling, right? At the same time, there's never been a better time to find out what your kidney health is, because we've got breakthrough medicines that can stop kidney diseases in their tracks. And so there's just never been a better time to find out about your kidney health, find out your kidney numbers, and if you need to see a specialist, go see that specialist.
All right, what about finding out about your heart? What should you be doing in that regard?
Look, if you want to protect your heart, you absolutely have to love your kidneys. The same risk factors that lead to heart disease are the same risk factors that lead to kidney disease. And the problem is that if you get kidney disease, that actually puts extra strain on your heart. So, what I tell patients, first thing, just know your numbers. Know your blood pressure number. Know your diabetes number. Know your LDL cholesterol number. And if you need to, know your kidney numbers too. And then that knowledge, Dan, becomes power. That knowledge now allows you to start advocating for your own health and getting the care you need. If it turns out you don't have kidney disease, right? If it turns out your numbers or your kidney disease numbers are normal, you've got great kidney health, then keep doing the stuff that's great for your heart, because all of that stuff winds up being good for your kidneys. Active lifestyle and a balanced diet, a heart-healthy diet, those are really good for kidney health as well.
So I'm pretty good about exercising. I know it's good for my heart health, but you're also saying that's not enough. I should probably know my kidney numbers too, in addition to living an active lifestyle.
You know, I think if you've got any of those risk factors we're talking about, and unfortunately a lot of us have one or another, you know, whether it's family history, even if we're leading an active lifestyle, or you've been told, you know what, your blood pressure is a little high, it's worthwhile to get these simple tests. There's a blood test that looks at how well your kidneys are filtering. There's a urine test that looks at whether your filters are starting to become leaky or damaged.
Dr. Parikh, thank you so much for your time on a very important topic this morning. Anything you want to add to leave our viewers with before I go?
Look, I mean, that message of love your kidneys, pay attention to your kidney health, so important. There's a website that you can check out, your viewership can check out. It's asn-online.org. They'll see a big banner across the top that says love your kidneys. Lots of good information in there.
If you have a baby or a toddler, this is the conversation that you will need to hear. A respiratory illness continues to circulate, and pediatricians say the earliest months of life are when children are most vulnerable, and routine vaccinations remain one of the most powerful tools to keep them safe. Joining us now this morning is Dr. Joanna Parga-Belinkie with the American Academy of Pediatrics. We're so glad to have you on because we definitely want to talk about this important subject here this morning. So we'll start with this. The Centers for Disease Control recently changed their vaccine schedule, reducing the number of recommended shots for all children. But then the American Academy of Pediatrics released their own schedule, sticking with the same number of vaccines that were in place before. So why are you recommending parents stick to this schedule in particular?
Well, the American Academy of Pediatrics schedule, and mind you, they've been putting out schedules since the 1930s, is really based on what American children need. It looks at the needs and the vulnerabilities of our children and make sure to bolster and teach their immune system in order to fight off infections that you said yourself, Jonathan, kids are vulnerable for. So that's why I always follow the American Academy of Pediatrics, because I know it's grounded in science and real caring for our children.
And we talked about that vulnerability. You alluded to it as well. Why are the earliest months such a critical time for these babies?
Listen, you get immunity from your mother when you're inside the womb, and when you're born, the placenta helps transfer some antibodies to protect baby, but those start to fade at around 2 months when we recommend the first round of routine vaccination. And we time these vaccines too, and the schedule is made such that when children are at their most vulnerable, starting in infancy and as they're growing to these infections, that these immunizations are teaching their immune system and helping their body build resilience to these infections. And so that's why it's so important that we follow a schedule that's very science-based.
We know there are a lot of opinions about vaccines, but what are the risks involved if families perhaps choose to delay these vaccines, especially during the infancy phase of life?
Listen, it's just leaving children, again, we use this word vulnerable to these infections, and it doesn't allow for their immune system to grow. You have to think about, and I get this question from parents all the time, that they are overwhelmed or worried about the amount of shots. But if you think about the immune system, it's learning from its environment every day, and it's seeing what we call antigens, things that are in vaccines too, just in the environment, and learning and growing from that. So I always think of vaccination as a way to augment or to help the growth and development of the immune system. And so when you delay or you skip, you're just leaving your child open to these infections, which you don't want to do.
You know, so there's a lot of information out there, a lot of opinions, as I mentioned as well. How can parents tell the difference between what's critical medical guidance and some misinformation?
Yeah, I think it's all about the sources. So go to the American Academy of Pediatrics sources. They have a website for parents called healthychildren.org. And another place I really like for vaccines is the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia has the Vaccine Education Center and also a website called Pediatric Health Chat. And on those, you can actually write in questions to physicians to get answers about vaccines. So make sure you're going to really credible sources online to get your vaccine information.
News for families and students across Metro Atlanta. There is a brand new tuition-free public charter school focused on healthcare and STEM education. It's coming to Uptown Atlanta, and it is the first of its kind in Georgia. The Academy for Innovation in Medicine, also known as AIM, is opening this dedicated middle and high school, and its goal is to prepare some of these students for real-world healthcare careers. Joining us now is Christy Beam, CEO of the Academy for Innovation in Medicine. Christy, thanks so much for being here. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, congrats on this huge milestone. I mean, it almost sounds too good to be true. How is this different from normal middle and high schools?
Well, so what we have done is we have taken evidence-based strategies that are happening in schools, but we've combined them in a very, very unique way. And so we have taken the rigor of early college and STEM education and combined that with the relevance of CTAE and work-based learning. So what students get is skills, academic rigor, and the confidence and credentials to be successful right out of high school, and then the opportunity the trajectory to advance their career, whether that's through advanced degrees all the way through medical school, or whether it's through additional credentials to increase their earning potential.
Give me an idea of what some of the courses look like. I mean, do you move biology up a little sooner, for example?
So for our sixth graders, yes, our goal is so we are opening in the fall with sixth and ninth grade. So our middle school students, our goal is that they earn at least 5 high school credits before they enter high school. However, we can expand or contract. It is a very tailored experience for students. So there is not one pathway that exists for all students. We tailor the experience to the students' goals, and we meet the students where they are. So because we are very focused on the healthcare and it is embedded into everything that we do, that's how students are able to complete their associate degrees, their credentials. We tailor our schedules for them to be able to achieve all of that by the end of high school.
So how many students can you take? Are you hiring for teachers right now? And how can I get my kid into the school?
Oh my gosh, yes, yes, and yes. So we are definitely hiring teachers. Please reach out. We are accepting 260 students in our first year. Again, we are opening the middle and high school, so we're starting with 6th and 9th grade. We'll be expanding to 870 students by year 4 in grades 6 through 12. We accept students from DeKalb County, Fulton County, Clayton County, Cobb County, and City of Atlanta. So please visit us at aimgeorgia.org, and we would love to meet you, your student, and your families.
Hey, I still got some time with you. I want to ask you about this partnership you have with Grady. What kind of hands-on experience can you get, and at what age does that start?
Oh my gosh, we are so fortunate. The students are so fortunate. As you know, Grady Health System is one of the premier teaching hospitals in the country, and they have worked side by side with us to create this experience. It has grown out of their amazing summer program, the Teen Experience Leadership Program, which is actively enrolling students right now. That program is now being expanded times 100 to become the experience that students will, what students will experience at AIM. The professionals at Grady are right on board to build this experience really from 6th grade. So middle school is about that exploration, understanding what career pathways are. Healthcare is not just about doctors and nurses, it's about the whole healthcare ecosystem, and really learning from those professionals in the school building. In 9th and 10th grade, they begin to shadow and get those experiences in the hospital. And by 11th and 12th grade, they are embedded in those work-based learning internship clinical experiences at Grady.
I'm glad you said it's not just nurses and doctors. I think a lot of kids these days, especially with the cost of college, are rethinking whether that 4-year degree is necessary. Are you preparing all the students for a college path, or is there an opportunity for them to, straight from high school, go into the medical field?
So our students will have the opportunity to be well prepared for well-paying jobs directly out of high school. But they certainly have the opportunity to continue on in their education, and we build those pathways for our students to be well prepared for college and career when they leave us. We are working with Grady to ensure that we are preparing students for the high demand careers and jobs that are actually waiting for them when they graduate, such as, professions in nursing, radiology, paramedic, pharmacy, et cetera, health informatics. So all of those areas, hospital administration, we want students to, to understand what's available to them, choose their pathway, and we will build the trajectory to help them get there.
Yeah, Christy, you say high demand, and you are not exaggerating. Georgia expected to have 100,000 open jobs in the healthcare industry by 2030, according to the chamber. Why do you think that is?
Healthcare is a challenging career. And that is one thing that we also focus on with our students. It is a difficult job to care for others. And so we do work with our students again from day one. How do we create healthy selves, healthy community, and healthy world? How do we manage our own stress so that we can help others? That's why we are one of the main reasons that we are focused so heavily on healthcare. Is that it is a critical need in the state of Georgia and across the country, that if we don't address, it's going to have a devastating impact on all of us if we don't have enough healthcare professionals to care for us.
Yeah. Christy, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations again. I hope maybe we can come on campus in the fall and see things once the classrooms are up and running. Where can folks go for more information?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Please visit us at aimgeorgia.org. And again, we are welcoming 6th and 9th graders for the fall. Our first day of school with students is July 29th. So please visit us for more information. We should be starting tours in April once our building is complete. And we just look forward to seeing families join us.
After the U.S. Supreme Court ruled Friday that President Trump overstepped his authority by using emergency powers to impose sweeping global tariffs, saying Congress, not the president, controls the power to tax imports. The White House blasted that decision, calling it judicial overreach, and within hours, the president moved to impose new tariffs under a different trade law. The Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond says the Treasury Department collected $287 billion in tariffs so far for 2025. PNC Financial Services Group says as of mid-December, $130 billion of that was collected as IEEPA tariffs. But as much as $150 billion in refunds could be on the way to businesses. So what does all of this mean for businesses here in Georgia and for you at home? Joining us to help break all this down is Sina Galara, Assistant Professor of Supply Chain Management at Georgia State's Robinson College of Business. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So a lot of numbers, a lot went on over the weekend. It's been a bit of a whirlwind. So let's really break this down for folks. When we talk about tariffs being collected and possibly refunded, what does that actually mean in real world supply chain terms?
Well, it all depends on where the money flows after this, whether they actually do issue the refunds and who gets it. Under the current complex supply chains that we have for importing, this sounds like nearly impossible to do fairly, because as a company, when you're importing something, you're importer of the record, you pay the tariffs, but the actual cost might be borne by someone else who's the final customer of that tariff. So it's very complex who actually paid and who actually bore the cost of it. And sometimes it's a multilateral negotiation where several firms share the burden of tariffs, but only one of them pays it to the government. So when they pay that back, who gets what and what share and what's fair, it's very complicated.
And of course, businesses, companies did celebrate when they heard about these tariffs being rescinded. But of course, the president moved quickly to impose a new 10, then 15% global tariff after that Supreme Court ruling on Friday. So what can folks expect now from this new tariff? What impacts do you expect it to have?
Well, if they actually returns any portion of that money back to businesses, that's going to have a stimulative effect. So businesses are obviously they're going to be they have more funds to work with, and this will help with economic activity, employment, especially good for Georgia. More imports, more activity is going to help our economy a lot. However, again, it's all up in the air how much of that will be returned and when. It looks like the administration is going to fight this and drag as much as possible. So we just have to watch and see how much actual money will be returned. One other thing I'll mention is before consumers get very excited about prices dropping, when I put myself in the shoes of a CEO, they really can't drop prices even if they get a refund. The reason for that is that they're not sure about future. Maybe tariffs will come back with similar might and similar sting. And at the moment, things are very uncertain. So no one knows the future. It would be difficult for a CEO to want to risk and reduce prices. And so consumers may get a lot less of the effect.
So what's your advice to consumers in this moment that's uncertain, not just for us consumers trying to figure this all out, but for economists as well who are unsure where we're going from here?
I think there's a lot of uncertainty regarding tariffs' effect on the economy, regarding jobs, regarding what AI is doing to the economy. So I think it would be prudent for people to be more cautious than ever. With the risk they're taking and with their finances until things get more clear.
Julie Kirkendall, Executive Director of Feeding Georgia. Hey, Julie, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. It's great to have you after a nice weekend here, although it is a cold morning to start things off here in Atlanta. Julie, just to start us off, what is the state of food banks right now across the state?
Well, the state of food banks is where it has been for a while, which is that we are experiencing more need than we have resources to address. And that's always a concern for us in times like this where inflation is high, fuel prices are high. There's a lot bearing down on families that are facing food insecurity and hunger. So this news out of the USDA is very good news for food banks and especially those who are facing hunger in our community.
Yeah, how do you interpret that announcement from the Department of Ag? I mean, is this something that can help immediately, or are we going to see it further down the road?
It takes a little bit of time, but yeah, for the most part, this is immediate good news. So it's a great example of how the USDA partners with farmers and with emergency food assistance networks like food banks, right? So periodically they will look for oversupply in the market and they will actually come in and purchase that oversupply, those oversupplied products, and then they can turn that around and distribute that to emergency food assistance networks like our food banks, which is fantastic. Everybody wins. It's called bonus commodities, and those commodities are rich and nutritious and healthy. So you've got things like milk and cheese and butter. There's even some pecans in there and beans. So just the very things that families need to put on their tables.
And you said this is a win for everybody. I mean, I got to think the farmers are ecstatic to have some of the supply taken off their hands and to get some money in return. I mean, what does this do for Georgia farmers where agriculture is such an important part of our state?
I think you said it right there. You know, ag is such an important part, not only for the state of Georgia, but for really the country. So yes, when farmers hear this, it's also really good news for them. It's a way that the federal government and the USDA really partners and looks out for the farmers' interests, and that we all protect each other as a nation in terms of our food supply, which is extremely important. And so these bonus commodities, what's called Section 32, periodically the USDA can come in and do this, and we're always thrilled when they do it, and they do it as much as they can. So we really appreciate the partnership. And again, the biggest relief is for our neighbors and families that are looking to put food on the table tonight.
Yeah, and some of those families are watching right now. Maybe they're feeling food insecure for the first time in their lives. What should they be doing right now? What's the first step?
The first step is to find your local food bank. You can go to feedinggeorgia.org and you can do a food bank finder right on the homepage that you can plug your zip code into and look for the very nearest food bank in your community. We supply the church pantries and the soup kitchens across the metro Atlanta area and across the state that feed in their local communities, where neighbors can see a trusted face and someone that's familiar when they go to do something like try to find a meal and try to get some food. It's tough. You can imagine for anyone facing this situation, it's not something people want to be worried about or having to deal with, but that's what food banks are there for. So they simply find their local food bank, check the hours, check the times, and go visit them right away. That's what it's there for. It's there for you.
Julie, we find ourselves in this partial government shutdown right now affecting the Department of Homeland Security. But I'm just curious to know, coming off that record shutdown last year, I think it ended in November. So here we are a few months later. Are you guys still feeling the impacts of that, or have you fully recovered?
We are still in recovery mode, and we will be for some time. That was the longest ever shutdown. Not only did it impact government workers, but eventually it impacted the SNAP nutrition program. That's otherwise known as food stamps. When that hit, that was unprecedented. So that was tough. Our food banks dipped into their reserves to fill the shelves to make certain that all of the need was filled. And we are still in recovery mode, as are our families. And that will go on for a time. So again, something like bonus commodities and distribution from USDA is right on time.
Julie, my final question to you. As we all think about the future and artificial intelligence, how do you think about that when it comes to tapping into AI, to feed the hungry, to looking towards the future of food distribution? How is that going to change things down the road?
I love that question. We've been asking that ourselves. Food banks are constantly in mode of innovation. And if you think about it, food banks are literally a very sophisticated supply chain and logistics network for getting food from where it might be thrown away or wasted or plowed under to the tables of families in need. And that takes a lot of supply chain and logistics sophistication. And so it's really exciting to think, how can we harness AI? And all across the Feeding America network and all across the state of Georgia at our food banks right now, we are asking that question, looking at new technologies and innovations and ways to get that food from place to place and to the tables much faster. It's a great thought and a super exciting time for all of us, including food banks.
Mr. Segal, thank you for your time. Just put this in perspective for us. How big of an opinion was this from the court?
Not as big as most of the media is making it out to be. Yes, it invalidated Trump's tariffs under one law. And yes, it's maybe a sign that the Roberts Court isn't just going to rubber stamp every big thing that the president does. But at the end of the day, as the president said a couple hours after the decision was announced, he's going to try to do this a different way. Now, the way he's trying to do it under a different law may or may not be legal. That's going to take years to figure out, probably. Also, under the new law, Congress has to step in within a certain amount of time. But I do think one of the problems with the court decision was that it didn't talk about remedies, didn't talk about what to do now. And I think that I am not an economist, I'm a law professor, but I do think the stock markets are responding this morning to the chaos created by the possibility of future tariffs.
Yeah, the Dow down 600 points this morning. We know the market's not a huge fan of tariffs. Many companies now, including Costco, lining up in the lower courts to demand these refunds that you alluded to here. Justice Kavanaugh called it a mess when it comes to sorting out the refunds. I mean, what could that process possibly look like? Is there any kind of precedent for this?
Not for this size, I don't think. And it's complicated as to which courts it has to go to and how much people are entitled to. There may be issues of immunity. There may be all kinds of questions about this. And it really was, I think, whether one is on the left, the right, in the middle, Democrat, Republican, whatever, the court should have said something about how we're going to figure out the procedures for future remedies, if any. And the court's absence is definitely causing chaos and confusion among most people who have small companies or big companies in this country.
Let's talk about some of the remedies for businesses in particular, and I'm thinking small businesses, many of whom who are going to try to recoup this money, I'm sure. Senator Elizabeth Warren said that the money was illegally taken from them. But then I think you might hear an argument from the White House saying that, well, they just passed the cost on to consumers. If that's indeed the case, I mean, what do you make of that argument? Who's likely to win in court there?
I think so I'm asked that question, all the time about who's likely to win in court. And my answer usually is, tell me who the judge is, and I'll tell you who's most likely to win. I know that's not a popular view, but it is an accurate view. Although in this case, the procedures are so complicated and the potential remedies are so varied, it's really hard to know. We are in uncharted water. I did not like Justice Kavanaugh's 60-page dissent. 95% of it I thought was frankly inaccurate and hyperbolic. But yes, this is a mess. He is correct about that.
Okay, what about everyday Americans possibly seeing a refund? What would that look like?
That's not going to happen. I think we can just cut that out of the conversation. I think small businesses who had to, pay a higher premium for these products because of these illegal tariffs have a good chance of getting some money back. I don't know when, and that's going to take a long time. I would say the chances of you, me, and normal Americans getting any money back from this is virtually non-existent. I don't think that's part of this case.
I know you're a law professor, not an economist or a political science professor, but I mean, this is happening with the midterms on the horizon. And this could possibly, as you said, be litigated for years. I mean, could this stretch into the next presidency, this battle in the courts?
I don't know if it'll stretch 3 more years, but it could certainly stretch 1 to 2 more years. And I just want to say, law professors, political scientists who study the Supreme Court have similar perspectives. The American people sometimes forget that the justices, although they work in a marble palace on a big hill, they're human beings like us. And I think what the Roberts Court did in this case was send a message that we're just not going to roll over and do whatever the president wants, because 6 of them are Republicans. But there's a lot of pain to come for the left in terms of the Voting Rights Act, gay rights, birthright citizenship possibly. There's a lot of big cases coming. And I think this case was mostly about the court sending a message, we're not 100% going to do what Donald Trump says. They will do 98% of what Donald Trump says, in my prediction, but not 100%. And that's really the significance of this case, unless small businesses really do get meaningful refunds. And if they do, then the case is a little more important than what I just said. But that's unclear. Believe me, the remedies here are complicated and unclear.
So if this was about the Supreme Court sending a message that they are still independent, is it also, does it extend beyond tariffs at all? When it comes to presidential overreach, making decisions without the use of Congress, or is this decision strictly about tariffs?
I think it's both. I think it's definitely about tariffs because the law President Trump used, IEPA, people have heard that. It's not a law that applies to tariffs. So it was pretty clearly illegal thing for Corell. But coming up are really big cases about presidential power. For example, can the president fire the Federal Reserve, governors without any interference from Congress and that kind of thing? And I think the court is going to side with President Trump most of the way when we get all the decisions by June 30th. That's not to say there may be 1 or 2 smaller decisions where they don't. I do think because of the publicity this case got, the Supreme Court gets a lot of PR benefit from this, and people should not forget these men and women like to get PR benefit, like we all do. And I think that's mostly what this case is about. At the end of the day, Donald Trump is not going to give up on tariffs. We know this. And so there's a lot more fighting to come about that. He's already said 15% across the board, right? He's not going to give up.
We are joined now by Zach Mahavsa of the Southern Poverty Law Center with a new report looking at natural disaster risk and access to the ballot booth. Zach, we appreciate you joining us. For those who have not yet read this report, give us the top line finding and argument of the SPLC in this report.
Sure. So first off, thank you for having me. One Zach to another. Nice to, have a little symmetry there. So the research we're doing is largely looking at how does the electoral system get impacted by natural disasters, right? And what we found is it's an incredibly complex and interwoven sort of system. So there are impacts at the individual level, there's impacts at the systemic level. And it gets even further granular when we start to consider the different types of disasters, particularly those that hit Georgia. For example, the problems that are raised by flooding tend to be a little bit different, obviously, along the coast than versus, say, part of the interior. Hurricanes and tornadoes tend to complicate that a bit further. So what we generally found is it is a very interwoven and very complex set of systems that need to be addressed as a whole in order to secure elections and prevent any sort of large-scale disruption.
Zach, let me read you something from the report. I think this is the top line either of the report or from the press release sent out in support of it. This is one of the top lines here. I'm just going to read it in full. So this is a quote. As the Deep South experiences its second consecutive year of deadly winter storms, a report from the Southern Poverty Law Center warns that increasingly frequent and unpredictable natural disasters pose a critical and largely unaddressed threat to voting rights across the region, with black communities disproportionately affected by storms. Tell us more about that finding.
Yeah, sure. So there's kind of two components to this, right? So there's the first, that's the broader component of climate change, right? So we know that these storms that we're talking about, hurricanes, tornadoes, winter storms, they're both getting more frequent and more severe. This impacts a lot of different communities in different ways, but one of the big issues we found is when it comes to resilience, the capacity for communities to absorb these storms and to respond to them is very complicated. And this overlaps significantly with economic resources, with sociological resources, with governmental resources. And as a result, there are some communities, particularly in Georgia, that end up being left behind. And as a result, we need to see some sort of systemic change to kind of help mitigate this, to help, make sure everyone is safe, everyone is as resilient as possible in the face of these potential disruptions.
Can you point to some specific instances that you uncovered in Georgia of people being unable to cast a ballot due to natural disasters?
Yeah, so we're still in the process of going through and doing what we call story collection. So talking to the voters that were directly impacted. Most of our research thus far has been very bird's eye view, looking at data available from FEMA, data available from the census, data available from various election offices, and kind of putting those together. But one of the big recurring risks we see in Georgia pertains to heat. So if you look at the timing of when we have primary elections, there is a significant degree of risk when it comes to long lines. When we have high turnout, that's great, right? Like, we want people to go out and participate in elections. But if there are not enough ballots, or not ballots, but ballot machines, if there are not enough polling places, one of the things that happens is you get a bottleneck, you get long lines. Well, with Georgia, we know in the summer months, it gets really hot. It is really hard to cool off here. And there is some concern that people might be dissuaded from attending and participating if they feel that they're going to be put out in this extreme heat. There's also a concern for the elderly, right? So we know everyone is vulnerable to heat, but typically older voters, typically over the age of 65 or so, have a lot more difficulty dealing with the problems that come with extreme heat exposure. And as a result, we are exploring a bit further and trying to make sure that, folks are not getting excluded because of these temporal results from the weather.
Just one follow-up question on that, and then I want to talk about some of the suggested action items in your report here. I mean, as you mentioned, it seems like right now the report is pretty broad level, macro level focused. I suspect there'll be plenty of people who are listening and nodding along. I suspect there may also be some people in Georgia, perhaps in the Secretary of State's office and elsewhere, and offices that oversee elections, that may raise the question and say, but can you point to specific problem points and actual examples of things going wrong because of the weather here?
Yeah, so I can't really point to Georgia specific. Again, we're looking very broad level. We're looking at like census tract level data across all of the Deep South. So going from Louisiana all the way over to Georgia, down into Florida. The big areas that we've kind of focused on tend to be the hurricanes that have struck. So if we take the issues that were risen by Hurricane Katrina back in 2005, some of the issues that arose there were it was very difficult to try to get people to vote by mail, right? So the assumption of, mail ballots, that's a very easy way to vote. But if you are displaced by a natural disaster, you run into significant problems. There are questions of where these people go. The post office doesn't necessarily know how to get in touch with these folks. There's also communication breakdowns. And that's just one particular storm. Yes, Katrina was quite significant, but it's sort of this recurring problem, right? It is not like hurricane season is just going to stop or be a one and done. This is about trying to make sure things run as smoothly as possible. There's that famous line from Futurama, right? If you do something right, people wonder if you did anything at all. That's very much a mantra for how elections operate. And our concern is trying to make sure that election administrators are given the resources sufficient to allow them to plan and build up that resiliency so they can make sure that these types of disruptions do not occur. That is the core focus that we have here.
And Zach, just like I mentioned a moment ago, I want to give you the chance to talk about some of the recommendations made in your report, specifically to Georgia election administrators. What recommendations would you argue are ones that they should focus on?
Yeah, so there are a couple of different recommendations we have. Some of this is still being internally debated about what is most efficient versus what is most cost effective. And ultimately, we kind of recommend a couple of different things. The first is we think there should be more funding made for election administrators across the board. A lot of the issues that we kind of raised in this report, it's going to require funding, and election administrators are often working with very shoestring budgets. They accomplish a lot with very little. So one of the things we're trying to encourage is to give them more resources. Additionally, we are making suggestions in some places it may be worthwhile having things like generators available, with secondary benefits being, if you think about your common polling places, what are they? They're religious sites, they're schools, libraries, community centers. So investing in these resources to help make these areas more resilient, it's going to help improve the resilience for elections with secondary benefits for the community as a whole. Because while the report, we're focusing on elections, but there's a whole wide swath of the year, right? So these benefits are not just solely focused on the electoral system. They're going to help election administrators, but they're also meant to help the community as a whole.
The aftershocks continue to rattle Mexico at days after the takedown of one of the world's most wanted cartel bosses. 25 members of that country's National Guard were left dead in 6 separate attacks after the killing of the Jalisco New Generation cartel leader known as El Mencho. As a result, flights have been canceled into the popular tourist destinations such as Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara. And also any tourists who are already there have been advised to shelter in place. Now travelers are left wondering if it's safe to fly into Western Mexico. So let's bring in Christina Ernst, president of VIP Alpine Tours. Christina, great to have you on this morning. A lot of us have traveled to Mexico, or we know people who have. So when violence like this breaks out at these tourist destinations like this, it immediately affects the travel industry. What are you hearing this morning so far from clients?
Well, people are definitely very nervous about this. And the main thing is for people to understand the geography, first of all, and to follow trusted news sources such as yourself instead of just going straight to social media. With AI popping up or out there, there's so many different types of things, and we don't know what is real and what is not. And the main thing is to understand Mexico is very big. It's approximately 3 times the size of Texas. And with so many travelers now heading into spring break over the next month, traveling to Mexico, they have a right to be afraid of what is going on with what they're seeing and what they're hearing. But most of the travelers here from the Atlanta market are heading towards Cancun and Riviera Maya area, which is approximately, I would say, 1,500 miles from the area that is affected, which is Puerto Vallarta, which is like from Atlanta to Salt Lake City. So it's quite a big distance between those. And there was a diplomatic hold yesterday with travel that was lifted yesterday afternoon, and it was just done with safety in mind. And flights are back to normal going into Cancun. People are already getting out there on the beach this morning, and it's business as normal. However, there are definitely things that we need to do to be prepared for upcoming travel.
Yeah, we're looking.
One of the things.
Go ahead, Christina. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things is definitely to be prepared for their trip and register on step.gov, which is a smart traveler alert. It is a free online app. You register exactly where you're staying, and you will get updated alerts from the U.S. Embassy in Mexico on what to do should a situation like this arise.
Yeah, and how do you determine if a destination is safe enough to continue sending clients? Because we saw some of the video we were just showing of what's going on there in the Jalisco area, Puerto Vallarta, and even in the Guadalajara airport, people running for cover. So this is changing day by day. How are you monitoring this from your end?
So we definitely are keeping track of what's going on with our ground handlers there, the local police, all the different jurisdictions out there, and hotels. The hotel is the best source for people that are sheltering in place to keep an eye and know what's going on, and also to share their location. They need to make sure that all of their portable chargers, everything is charged at all times. So if there is something going on where they need to leave or evacuate, they are ready. And again, this is a extreme case scenario for those that are currently sheltering in place. As of right now, it is my recommendation to cancel trips to Puerto Vallarta. Of course, you won't be able to travel there within the next couple of weeks. But if you are going over spring break, talk to your travel professional, look and see what your options are to modify your trip. Either head to another destination, because Mexico is a wonderful country, lots of wonderful places to see and visit, or other destination to keep your spring break plans on track.